My name is Cecilia Gonzalez. I work for Action Baybrook. I'm the executive director.
My name is Christina Bittner, and I'm the property specialist here at Action Baybrook. My family's been here since the late 1800s, and I'm third generation. My nieces and nephews are now fourth generation. And it's not just us, there's a lot of people. You know, I always say Brooklyn Park's like the Hotel California. People check in anytime, but they never leave because they're still here.
Hey, I'm Molly Finch, and I'm the Program and Grants Manager here at Action Baybrook.
And Action Baybrook focuses on reducing the number of vacant and problem properties in the Baybrook area, which is composed by the neighborhoods of Brooklyn and Curtis Bay in Baltimore City and Brooklyn Park in Anne Arundel County. We do property investigation, so we hear from our community about concerns that they have with vacant properties, problem properties, blight, any kind of blight like trash, and then we work to try to support community members to find solutions to those problems. We also have acquired and renovated vacant properties, and we have sold them for homeownership.
There are many vacant properties where the property may not look vacant, but it's vacant. And in that case, we work with the city, do a 311 for them to investigate to see if it is vacant. And if so, they'll put a vacant building notice on it, and then we can start tracking what can be done about that property.
So our property investigation, as I mentioned earlier, is kind of like the foundation of a lot of Action Baybrook work, because some of these issues with vacant properties are not easy to solve. And so we are data driven in our approach, so we use a lot of public sources of data like code map, 311, court records, and other kinds of information to figure out what is the issue and how can we overcome it. But what differentiates us from maybe just any kind of data driven organization is that we are also community based, and so we can verify some of that information. So we call it ground truthing. Someone calls us and says, hey, I think this property is vacant. So we go, we check, we look whether the city has already given it a vacant building notice, and if not, we figure out maybe actions. Do we need to put a 311 request on that property? Do we need to request that people come and clean it up? Like, we figure out what actions we can take that will bring a solution. Some solutions are long term, but the key is that we actually have eyes on the street to work with that data. 311 is available via the web, via phone call, via the app, and anyone can put a 311 report. And so the key to, I think, 311 reports is that there's a need to follow up. Sometimes, in our case, Action Baybrook, we can work with community members for certain issues that are persistent, and see how we can escalate those issues to actually bring about a solution. And so we have partnered with the Department of Housing and Community Development to talk with the right people. I would say we have a pretty healthy ongoing partnership with Baltimore City, DHCD. We also have a partnership with Maryland, DHCD.
Action Baybrook is using many publicly available data sets that anyone could use. The challenge is pulling all that information together to really understand a situation. And so at the time that I came into the project, Action Baybrook had just started using a database platform called Access. And what I saw an opportunity for is to build out what's called a relational database. So all of our data is really connected to a property identification number, but we can spread out to all these different topics depending on what's happening with a particular property. So thinking about understanding any court cases open on a particular property, or understanding deceased owners and connecting to that, or plugging into 311s that we actively submit 311s as a type of action we can do around a problem property. And when you try to put all these things together into one table, it's way too long to try and manage. So using something like a relational database where you're using a unique ID and being able to pull into all these different information sources at the same time can really increase the type of information you can gather and associate with one property. Action Baybrook has done an inventory of environmental hazard properties or properties that actions happening on them, like being active junkyards or old industrial properties, basically properties that might have some type of contamination on them that would have to be addressed to take the property from being vacant to being a healthy space to be used by the community.
We currently have 4 lots where vacant properties were burnt out, collapsed, and had to be demolished, and now we're planning a new construction project. We are looking at having new properties, an innovative design, and we're looking at using modular construction for those properties.
If there's a squatter in a vacant property in the wintertime, the building will catch fire. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The people inside are trying to keep warm. They'll, start a little fire, maybe in the sink or somewhere to keep warm. They're trying to keep warm. And they get out of hand and the house burns down. So you have an entire row of houses impacted by this one vacant property.
I'm working with a land disposition agreement, moving forward the purchase of several properties that have been vacant for a long time so that we can renovate it and sell them for homeownership.
We've developed a vacant checklist that can help show if a property is vacant, if the mail is piled up, if it's freezing cold outside and the windows are open, things along that nature to help us identify them. We check to see if the water bill's paid, if the taxes are paid, where are the taxes being mailed, where's the water bill being mailed, if the owner is deceased, if the property is owned by a company, is that company valid? Are they in good standing in Maryland?
We also have a community planning project for a large brownfield, a contaminated field that is very prominent in our community. It's in Brooklyn and it's right adjacent to Brooklyn Park.
Brownfield designation is a formal designation of the federal government saying that based on historic record what's happened on that property in the past could have led to a contamination. This doesn't necessarily mean the property has officially been tested and confirmed for contamination, but the land use has led to believe that it's most likely contaminated, would require some cleanup process to make it reactive. And then there's places that are maybe actively being used in a way that might not be healthy for neighbors, like active junkyards that aren't actually licensed to be junkyards, but their property's being used in that manner. And then the third, obviously, is that there's industry that actively happens around the Baybrook area too.
People are concerned with maintaining their property. There are many community organizations, little neighborhood groups that work on a given area, trying to maintain the neighborhood and take care of things. There are many resources for children. Brooklyn has a youth athletic association. Brooklyn Park has a youth athletic association. We have a Chesapeake Arts Center.
We have a bi-monthly community meeting. The community meeting has also always been part of Action Baybrook. In the past, we have had monthly meetings, quarterly meetings, kind of trying to find the right rhythm. And so this year we have bi-monthly meetings where we have community members, community partners, and we talk about specifically what we're working on, and then people may bring questions to us. We also share a lot of resources we do share community resources in our social media or sometimes through our email list that we have. But the most recent one that I can point of how we are trying to support the community is that the state of Maryland announced a grant for critical home repairs that homeowners can apply to. And so we have been trying to figure out how we connect community members to resources so that they can prevent vacancy. And so this is one resource that we think is really good. So we put the information out, contacted the project manager for this grant so that we can find ways to support the residents who want to apply for this grant. And while we were walking around doing our proper investigation verification, like with the fire, for example, there was a fire and some properties got burnt out that were next to the property that caught on fire. And so Molly and Chris were out talking to the neighbors and were able to get some information of the neighbors who were affected. And so we put together this information package for critical home repairs, gave it to the neighbors so that they can apply. And we said, if you need assistance, let us know. And so a similar story happened when we, I think Ayos and Molly were walking around on 3rd Street, very close by, also doing our vacancy verification, and saw that some neighbors' basements had flooded. And so we've been working with one of the neighbors to figure out like what the source was. We contacted DHCD and told them potentially the vacant property is the source of the flooding. And then one of the neighbors is wanting to apply for this grant, and so we're in communication with the neighbor so that we can provide any support that's needed. Connecting to resources for housing counseling, I know that's a big aspect of CDN. Connecting, not just resources, but even advocating for more resources. Specifically, the work of Action Baybrook that I think we have been really trying to figure out how to overcome some of the limitations is the fact that right now there's a lot of investment for vacancy reduction, but there's a huge need for vacancy prevention. The repairs that these neighbors need that are also influenced and caused by the vacant next door are huge, and the resources are really limited. And so I think working together to advocate for more resources for neighbors, for legacy residents, neighbors who are struggling for many different reasons, but even for these specific vacant properties that have caused some of these issues as well. I think that is something that we could be doing together as well with CDN.
The original intent of creating this database was to speak to the policy concern about, are there typical ways a property becomes vacant? And how can we be proactive before it becomes the state of being a very dilapidated property, where there could be kind of flags that are identified within city agencies or other groups to be able to proactively reach out to those properties and stop them from reaching such a really dilapidated state. Some of these vacants have been vacant for 10, 20 years.
Right now, with our new construction on Annabelle Ave, where we have the vacant lots that used to be vacant properties, we are looking to build, instead of just a 2-story single family home, we are looking to build a 3-story, 2 dwellings, a ground floor to be a accessible unit, and then the top story 3-bedroom unit. And we're working to prepare and submit a variance request, because currently with the current zoning laws we are not able to just build that. And so I think some of the discussions going on about changes to the zoning requirements influence what we do. I think also obviously the changes about taxing vacant properties influences what we do. I think inclusionary housing, like the availability of affordable housing, influences what we do. So yeah, there's a lot, and we like to work together to get involved in that as much as is in our capacity. Even though we are a small organization, some of these issues are complex, right? We may do some work, but without the policy changes that need to happen, we might be like spinning our wheels and not moving things forward unless the policy changes. And so I think the work of CDN is very key for us